Normally, yes, Lieutenant, Miller replied, his patience thinning. But the civilian on the range is named Alan Palmer. The line went silent, just static. Miller could almost hear the young officer's mind racing. Palmer? The lieutenant finally asked, the name sounding unfamiliar. Am I supposed to know that name? Just send it up the chain, Lieutenant, Miller said firmly. Do it fast and tell them it's about his rifle. The orange one. He hung up before any more questions came. The spark was lit, and now all he could do was wait, hoping it wouldn't explode in everyone's faces. Inside the sterile, climate-controlled command center, Lieutenant Harris stared at his phone. Miller wasn't the type to exaggerate. He opened the global personnel database and typed in Alan J. Palmer. The system processed for a moment before flashing a red warning. Access restricted, eyes only, or 7 and above. Harris felt a jolt, like static electricity running through him. Level 07 clearance meant Brigadier General. He was only a second lieutenant. Rising from his chair, he hurried straight to the base commander's office, a full colonel, and entered without waiting. Sir, you need to see this. The colonel looked up, irritation lining his face, each wrinkle earned from decades in desert campaigns. What is it, Lieutenant? I got a call from Gunny Miller at the range. There's a civilian out there, Alan Palmer. The system flagged him hard. The colonel's expression changed instantly. He came around the desk, glanced at the screen, and when he saw the name, all color drained from his face. Without a word, he picked up the secure line connecting directly to the commanding general's office. Ma'am, Colonel Price here. Sorry for the interruption. Yes, ma'am. He's here. Palmer, he's on our range right now. There was a long pause. Yes, ma'am. The ghost of the valley. He's in some sort of standoff with our recon Marines. Another moment of silence. Yes, ma'am. I'll meet you at your vehicle. We're rolling. He hung up hard and turned to Harris, eyes blazing. Get me 1st Recon's commander on the line. Tell him his career's on the line. General Marcus is en route, personally, and God help his Marines. Back at the range, Corporal Evans's patience finally snapped. The old man's quiet defiance felt like a direct insult. The growing crowd only made it worse. His authority, his identity as a Marine NCO was being challenged by an elderly man with a bright orange rifle. That's it. I'm done asking, he barked, voice tight with anger. You're a danger to this facility and my Marines. I'm ordering you to leave this firing point immediately. Refuse, and I'll have you detained for trespassing and disrupting training. Maybe you're confused, old man. Maybe you don't remember where you are. He stepped forward, reaching for Palmer's shoulder, intending to remove him by force. He never got the chance. The ground began to tremble, a low rumble that quickly grew into the thunderous roar of high-performance engines. Heads turned toward the main access road where a cloud of dust trailed behind a convoy. 3 black, government-plated SUVs and a lead Humvee, racing toward them at full speed. They weren't driving, they were charging. The vehicles ignored the parking area, tearing directly onto the range and skidding to a stop just yards away. Dust swirled as doors flew open and armed personnel emerged with crisp, purposeful precision that made the recon Marines look like rookies. From the lead SUV stepped Colonel Price, but it was the woman exiting the second vehicle's passenger side who silenced the entire range. Brigadier General Marcus, known for her steel will and legendary combat record, stepped into the open, her uniform immaculate, her single silver star gleaming in the desert sun. Her sharp gaze swept the scene, Evans's tense stance, his Marines' stunned faces, and finally the calm, seated figure of Alan Palmer. Ignoring everyone else, she strode straight toward him, each step measured and deliberate. The only sounds were the crunch of gravel beneath her boots and the soft ticking of cooling engines. Corporal Evans stood frozen, his hand still half raised where he'd meant to grab the old man. He looked from the general to Palmer, his confidence evaporating with every heartbeat. Alan Palmer stood motionless, his mind struggling to grasp the unfolding moment. General Marcus came to a halt directly before him. She said nothing at first, only brought her heels together with a sharp click, raising her arm in a salute that was crisp, precise, and filled with unmistakable respect. This was no routine gesture of formality. It carried a depth of reverence, the kind a soldier reserves for a true legend. Mr. Palmer, she said firmly, her voice carrying across the silent field. It is an honor, sir. I apologize for the behavior of my Marines. They did not understand who they were addressing. She maintained her salute unwavering. Alan Palmer rose slowly from his stool, his movements deliberate, dignified. Though age had shortened his frame, he stood with a pride and steadiness that defied time. With a brief nod of acknowledgement, he accepted her gesture. Only then did General Marcus lower her salute. When she turned to Corporal Evans, the warmth in her eyes vanished, replaced by a cold, sharp intensity. "Corporal," she said quietly, each word heavy with controlled anger. "Do you have any idea who this man is?" Evans, his face pale and his hands trembling, stammered. No, ma'am. He's a civilian, ma'am." "A civilian?" The general's short, humorless laugh cut through the silence. "Corporal, you and your men are standing on ground you didn't earn, breathing air paid for by sacrifices you can't begin to imagine, all in the presence of the man who helped build the very world you serve in." She turned back toward Palmer, her tone softening slightly as she spoke his name. "This is Alan Palmer." She let the name hang in the air like a solemn blessing. Then, facing the gathered troops, she continued, "For those too young or too uninformed to understand, let me explain. Let me educate you. This man holds the highest civilian honor for valor that our nation can award. For 3 decades, he worked as a special projects consultant for DARPA. Before that, he served in operations so classified they're not even mentioned in history books. He is credited with 5 confirmed kills at distances beyond 2,500 yards, a record that stood unchallenged for nearly 40 years. Every one of those shots was made using a rifle he personally designed and built. Our modern sniper doctrine exists largely because of him. We call him the Ghost of the Valley. Not because he's gone, but because he went where no one else could, completed missions others wouldn't dare attempt, and vanished without a trace. She stepped toward the shooting bench and pointed at the bright orange rifle. "This weapon you were so quick to mock," she said, "is the Mark V, the prototype for the M210 sniper system you're carrying right now, Corporal. Only this one is superior. He built it on a forward operating base using salvaged parts and a solid block of aluminum. The bright orange paint you find amusing, it was so that medevac teams could locate his position for extraction, after he spent 3 days single-handedly holding off an entire enemy platoon to protect a downed pilot. That color saved his life, and the life of that pilot who, I should mention, later became a 4-star general." The range fell silent. Now the room was heavy with shame and awe. Corporal Evans looked as though he wished the earth would swallow him whole. The Marines who had been laughing and joking moments earlier now stood silent, staring at their boots, their faces red with embarrassment. General Marcus turned back to the corporal, her voice dropping into a controlled, stern tone. "You didn't see a veteran," she said firmly. "You saw an old man. You didn't see a living piece of history, you saw a relic. You mistook resilience for frailty, strength for weakness, and in doing so, you dishonored your uniform, your comrades, and yourselves." She raised a trembling finger toward him. "You and your entire squad will report to my office at 600 tomorrow for a personal lesson in Marine Corps history and professional conduct. It's a lesson you won't soon forget." As her words lingered in the air, Alan Palmer finally spoke. His voice wasn't loud, but its calm authority drew even more attention than the general's anger. "General," he began evenly, "they're young, and they're proud. That's not a bad thing. They just need to learn where to direct that pride." He turned to Corporal Evans. There was no anger in his eyes. "Only deep time-worn understanding, son," he said quietly. "Your duty isn't to be the strongest. It's to honor the strength that came before you. Humility weighs more than any pack you'll ever carry, but it's the one that'll take you the farthest." He rested a hand on the stock of the orange rifle, and a vivid memory came rushing back, clearer this time. He was in a makeshift workshop, the air filled with the smell of machine oil and damp earth. Younger then, his hand steady as he milled the rifle's receiver. Nearby, a wounded pilot lay on a cot, feverish. "Why orange, Al?" the pilot had murmured weakly. Without looking up, Alan had replied, "Because I only plan to take one shot. After that, I want to be easy to find one way or another." That memory captured a kind of courage beyond what the young Marines could yet comprehend. Palmer had built not just a weapon, but a signal, one that could mark his survival or his end, all depending on a single impossible shot. The aftermath came swiftly. True to her word, General Marcus put Corporal Evans and his squad through a relentless month of remedial training. an unyielding lesson in respect, discipline, and the weight of the uniform they wore. They didn't just study history, they lived it. Their days were spent cleaning and preserving historical artifacts at the base museum, and their evenings were dedicated to writing essays on Medal of Honor recipients. It was a humbling experience, one that no amount of physical training could ever replicate. The story of the old man with the orange rifle spread across the base like wildfire, a cautionary reminder against arrogance and a testament that true heroes often walk among us unnoticed. Shortly after, a base-wide directive was issued. All personnel were now required to attend an annual seminar on veteran interaction and respect for elders. A few weeks later, Corporal Evans found himself in the base library by choice, deeply engrossed in declassified mission reports from wars fought decades earlier. As the door opened, he looked up to see Alan Palmer enter, moving with the same calm purpose as before, heading straight for the advanced engineering section. Evans's heart pounded. He stood, his chair scraping lightly against the floor, and approached with measured steps, his hands behind his back and posture straight. "Mr. Palmer," he began softly, his voice unsteady. "Sir, I want to properly apologize. There's no excuse for how I acted. I was arrogant, and I was wrong. Completely wrong. I'm truly sorry." Alan Palmer paused and studied the young Marine. He saw the sincerity in Evans's eyes, the arrogance gone, replaced by genuine humility. A faint, forgiving smile crossed his face. "I told you, son," he said gently. "Humility suits you. You wear it well." They stood there for a moment, exchanging a silent understanding. The lesson had been learned. The following week, the firing range was closed for a special demonstration. General Marcus, Colonel Price, and several senior officers stood nearby, with Corporal Evans and his squad watching respectfully from a distance. At the bench lay Alan Palmer, positioned behind his orange rifle. At the general's request, he was to demonstrate what the weapon could truly do. Far away, the 400-meter target shimmered in the midday heat, the same one Evans had once dismissed as unreachable for a toy rifle. There was no ceremony or build-up. Alan calmly adjusted the scope with precise, practiced motions, checked the wind, and appeared to read the invisible air currents as if they spoke to him. For nearly a minute he remained perfectly still and part of the landscape itself. Then came a single, sharp crack from the rifle. The silence that followed was almost suspenseful. Moments later, a green light blinked on the distant target screen, dead center. A perfect bullseye from 400 meters. Gasps rippled through the crowd. It wasn't just an impressive shot. It was a near impossible one, challenging the limits of what anyone believed was possible. The legend of the ghost with the orange rifle was no longer just a tale from the past. It was alive, proven before their eyes. If Alan Palmer's story of quiet strength and hidden valor inspired you, please like this video and share it with someone who honors our veterans. Subscribe to Veteran Valor for more stories of humble heroes who continue to walk among us. Your support helps us preserve their legacy. Is this some kind of joke? The voice, sharp and carrying the unearned certainty of youth, cut across the dry air. Corporal Evans, barely into his 20s but wearing his Marine uniform like armor, gestured dismissively toward the rifle on the shooting bench. "Sir, you can't be serious about bringing that here." Alan Palmer, his 82 years shown in the creases around his eyes and the patient set of his jaw, did not turn. His gaze stayed aimed down range where heat shimmered over the baked earth, warping the distant targets into wavering shapes. He sat on a plain stool, relaxed yet firmly planted. The rifle itself looked odd, a custom-built chassis and stock painted a flat, non-reflective orange, the color of a construction sign or a child's toy. It felt wrong among the matte blacks, desert tans, and olive drabs of the standard military hardware at the long-range range. Another young Marine, a private first class with freckles across his nose, snorted. Maybe he thinks it's a water gun, corporal for when he gets thirsty. The small group, all crisp uniforms and high and tight haircuts, laughed. They were the new generation, masters of digital scopes and ballistic calculators, and to them this old man and his garish rifle were relics, an amusing diversion before their real training. Evans stepped closer, his shadow crossing Alan's bench. "I'm going to have to ask you to pack up your equipment, sir. This is a live fire range for active duty personnel. We're running advanced sniper training." He pointed at the orange rifle. "That thing is a distraction and a safety hazard." His tone mixed authority and condescension, the kind a young man uses when he thinks he controls the situation. Alan Palmer stayed silent, hands resting on his knees. His stillness unsettled the corporal more than any argument might. The quiet was unusual, a deep patience that felt like a silent rebuke. The range, a wide stretch of graded dirt and rock carved from the Mojave Desert, was normally a place of thunder and precise violence. Yet in this small exchange an awkward hush settled. Nearby shooters paused, their conversations trailing off as they watched the one-sided confrontation. The air buzzed with attention unrelated to ballistics. Feeling watched and mistaking the old man's silence for defiance, Corporal Evans pushed further. His voice rose, breaching range etiquette. "Did you hear me, old man?" I said, "Pack it up. What are you even doing here? This isn't the local VFW bingo night." He leaned in, lowering his voice to a whisper that was still loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "You probably don't even have the proper clearance to be on this facility." Alan finally moved. The motion was slow and deliberate as he reached for his simple canvas range bag. The Marines tensed, expecting compliance. Instead, he produced a worn leather wallet, softened by decades of use, and opened it to reveal a laminated card, his base access permit, which he held out without a word. Evans snatched the card, examined it, then did a double take. "This has to be expired or fake," he muttered, turning it over as if the plastic might reveal a trick. The name read Palmer, Alan J., and the credentials, much to his visible frustration, appeared in order. He shoved the card back. Unable to find a legitimate reason to eject him only increased Evans's irritation. "Fine, you have access," he conceded tightly. "But that doesn't mean you can play with your toys here. We have a 4,000 EMER target set up for our final qualification. It's a multi-million-dollar sensor suite, not a backstop for your personal science project," the corporal said sharply, gesturing toward a distant target, barely a visible speck against the desert horizon. "We're pushing the edge of modern tech here. The last thing we need is a stray round from whatever that is messing up our data." The private first class, encouraged by his corporal's tone, reached out and tapped the orange rifle stock with one finger. "Feels like cheap plastic. You probably 3D printed it in your garage." The instant the young Marine's finger made contact, Alan Palmer's eyes shifted. For a heartbeat, the calm, patient expression of the old man vanished, replaced by something ancient and unyielding, hard as flint. The desert sun glinting off the rifle's scope faded away, replaced by the dim, smoky light of a field tent filled with the smell of cordite and blood. He felt the phantom weight of a wounded brother leaning against him, the rhythmic thump of mortars creeping closer. A voice echoed in his mind, young and strained. "They're coming, Al. They know we're here. You have to finish it." The orange wasn't a joke. It was so the rescue team could find him. A single flare of color amid a jungle of green and brown, a desperate signal for survival. Palmer blinked, and the memory dissolved. The blinding desert sun returned, along with the smirking faces of the Marines. He hadn't spoken or moved, yet something in the air had changed. The quiet dignity in his posture now carried weight, an unspoken warning of the gravity behind it. Across the range, near the tower, Gunny Miller stood watching. A retired master sergeant turned civilian range safety officer. He'd seen plenty of cocky young NCOs, but this was different. It wasn't just disrespect. It was who they were disrespecting. The old man wasn't some casual shooter. There was precision in the way he sat, a disciplined stillness that only years of control could shape. Even his rifle, strange as it appeared, had the sleek, deliberate design of a specialized weapon, not a toy. Miller's brow furrowed. He'd seen a rifle like that before, long ago, during a classified briefing about a ghost, a legend from a war history had nearly forgotten. He thought back to the name he'd read on the sign-in sheet that morning. Palmer. Alan J. Recognition hit him like a jolt of cold iron. Those kids had no idea what they were dealing with. They weren't mocking an old veteran. They were poking a sleeping giant. Miller turned away, pulling his phone from his pocket as he walked behind the range tower. Scrolling through his contacts, he found the number for the base's command duty officer. It was an overstep, one that could cost him his job, but the decision was instinctive. It came from a place deeper than protocol. "Lieutenant," he said quietly when the call connected, voice low and tense. This is Gunny Miller out at the long-range facility. We've got a situation here you need to be aware of. Some young Marines from 1st Recon are giving an old-timer a hard time, and they're about to cross a serious line. Discipline issue, Gunny? The voice on the other end was calm, detached. Shouldn't that go through their company command?